Hi Capricorn, welcome to your October reading, and man, are we getting into it this month. It is just one of those times where everybody is checking in, everything is being done in a slightly different mode. We have a few times of these every year. This isn't unusual in many ways, but we have this Venus retrograde. Starting off in Scorpio, your 11th house. It's retrograding through Scorpio almost all of October. Venus retrograde is extremely personal energy, and so we're all checking in. Cards are already moving the world. That makes a lot of sense because the note that I have for you all is you're going to be surprised with what the next phase of your life is calling forth in you. Sometimes we have these ideas, about what our next phase is supposed to look like, what we've decided it needs to look like, what we've decided it is going to look like. We have our plans. Ten of Swords. You can see the shifting going on there, Cappies. I'm sure you can't. We've decided, okay, these are the projects I'm going to work on. These are the questions I'm going to answer. These are the people I'm going to work with. This is the love I'm going to have. This is the house I'm going to live in. Whatever it may be, we have our creation of that in our minds. For you, I think this Venus retrograde is going to be very interesting in how that energy, the star, beautiful, beautiful, brings you what you need and brings you a new way of envisioning what that is next. And what you are authentically connecting with and what you are connecting with because you feel like you should. We talk about that a lot with you all because you're so focused and get right in there. And sometimes you get caught up in things, projects, ideas, people that aren't serving you the best. Ace of Swords and Page of Wands. Let's see what else is going on this month. I mean, the big thing really is this Venus retrograde. It forces us all to take a moment to check in with our connections, with ourselves, with what we love and value, with how we relate to others. Five of Cups, Wheel of Fortune. And what we want to take with us into the next stage. It's very preparatory energy, and the High Priestess. Okay. Cappies, you have some really esoteric energy coming with you on this ride. You do have a new moon in your 10th house in Libra on the 9th. And then you have a full moon in your 5th house in Taurus on the 24th. So you have moons working with you in these cool areas, in these cool sectors. One that's about how you're moving through the world professionally and as an individual. And one that's about how you creatively utilize your spark. That's a really cool thing, and I think October, in many ways, it aspects you in a very illuminating and positive way. This October specifically, though, Venus only retrogrades every year and a half. It goes for 6 weeks. This is going until November 16th. It starts on the 6th of October, and it just changes the shape and the feel of this specific October to be very powerful and preparatory. Now for you, I just think you will be surprised by what that next expansive vision is going to be. I think the pieces that you're going to be working with are going to surprise you. And I think that there is something that needs to be shed here. Whether it's a relationship that's holding you or a situation that is holding you or an idea of yourself, there's something here that's taking some of your energy and needs to be cleared through. And I think the energies of this month will really help you do this in a way that is very impactful and helpful. So let's look at these first two cards that we had coming out here. See if I can pick them up. We have the World, the Ten of Swords, the Star. I'm not picking these up in order at all. The Star and the Ace of Swords. You can kind of see the themes here, I think, pretty clearly. We go right into it. So the World and the Ten of Swords especially connect very deeply for me. In many ways, they're actually different ways of envisioning the same process. And they're kind of different lenses through which you can look at the same process. So the World is where you close out an energetic cycle, an energetic time that you've been working with for quite a while, and you feel ready for it. It's very much that graduation energy of leaving behind one phase and stepping into the next and feeling that kind of ritual sense of that. The Ten of Swords is often seen as the more painful side of that process, where something that has been taking your energy, slowing you down, this can be a person, a situation, a way you've been thinking, it's very mental energy, has been taking you to the point where you finally have just been beaten down, stabbed to the back 10 times, and left to release that old way. And this is it's brutal, right? But here's the thing, I don't really get brutality with this. What I do get, though, is that this month, anything, whether it's friendships, the community you're around, because we do have this Venus retrograde happening in your 11th house in Scorpio, and this healing energy that for you just has to do with your community. You are going to be taking a look around at where you feel drained by people, where you feel drained by situations, where you feel like when you get home, you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I just can't find my energy. Pay attention to that, because you're being asked to shed anything like that. You don't have to keep every single obligation. And in fact, the more you hold on to some key part of this whole thing, the less you are going to feel like you are making the shifts that you want to be making, the less you're going to be feeling like the energy's in flow, and the less you're going to feel like those new doors are opening. So this is almost coming upon you, though. The energy is so strong here, right out of the gate, Cappies, that I think that it will be pretty clear what this is all about. There's some kind of graduation going on here, and it leads right into some beautiful energy. That's the beautiful thing about it. Star and Ace of Swords, that's some crisp, clear expansion. Crisp, clear expansion in its purest form, quite honestly. I think there's been some murkiness, there have been some questions, there have been some complexities that have popped up in your life over the last couple of months, and not all of them are these insidious, terrible things, but it's been a little bit funny. And suddenly now it's time to let that go and expand to the next thing and get that clarity, get that this is what I need to be doing, these are the actions I need to be taking. Now the thing with the star, I always say this, the star demands a sacrifice. Well, we have it here, right? These two came out next to each other. The star always demands a sacrifice, and I always say the star demands the sacrifice of your comfort zone. Now, Cappies, I don't really see you as comfort zone people anyway. That's not really your thing. So I don't really have to tell you about that. But, I mean, we all have our own comfort zones, whether that's a mental habit that we have or something that we continue to do and we're not even conscious we're still doing it. That has to go. So once again, there's something that just has to be released before you can get to this clear, because I feel like some of you have been waiting for that answer, that aha. This is the next thing. This is the next path. This is the next part of the vision. This is the next part of this life I've already built. You've been waiting for that murkiness to ease a little bit so that you could get into this clear path. And I see that for you. I actually see there being some kind of aha moment. But you're only going to get it when you release whatever is holding you. And you can't pre-know and then release. That's the trick with this energy that you're having here, is that you can't know ahead of time what this answer is going to be or how it's going to pan out. You have to decide that you're going to cut off that old energetic way in order to get the information here. So that's an interesting assignment to be thinking about the first half of this month. And that feeling, Cappies, that there is something just shifting and morphing around you is so strong. Like a very big shift in identity is in the works. Now, I've been saying this, with Venus retrograde this way, you start to get information. You get a lot of information from Venus retrograde. In fact, you can get all the information you need from it. But I often find that the implementation of what you get from that Venus retrograde takes a little bit of time to get ground speed. So you may be finding all this information out, but don't put too much pressure on yourself to implement the entire new life plan this month, right? So here's the thing. We have similar themes coming up the second half of this month too. Page of Wands, Five of Cups, Wheel of Fortune, and the High Priestess are all speaking to this. There's something going on here because Like if you look at these three together, you know, Page is herald in some kind of information you need. And the Page came out right after the Ace of Swords. We have the Ace of Swords and the Page of Wands. These are action-based energies. These are energies that give you the information you need so that you can take action, so that you can create and move forward and move and have that directed, focused energy that you enjoy. And there is something about that clarity coming in, and yet every time there's this clarity of you've got to go and you've got to step into this next iteration of yourself that the world and the star are talking about, because they're asking you to step up to this next identity. You are also asked to grieve and release something that is not serving you anymore. Big time. Big time. And these things do often just, they are like twins that hold hands and go together. You can't have one without the other in some ways. We release, we create space for the next thing to fill in. Now, it doesn't have to be big dramatic grief. I always have to iterate that. For some of you, maybe you are going through some big loss, in which case, love you guys. I'm sending you all my best. And for some of you, this is just mourning an old self, honestly. I see a lot of this being about mourning an old identity of yourself, an old way that you saw yourself. And there is pain in that, because we have to forgive those old versions of ourselves too. Sometimes the old version of ourselves made interesting judgment calls about, you know, where they were loyal, or where they spent their energy, or where they spent their money, or where they invested their time. Sometimes we look back at our old selves and we say, oh man, like I was really hard on myself, or I was really not giving myself the best that I could in that time. But that's okay. We don't want to judge our past selves, but we do grieve. We lose a person that we were, you know, and suddenly you're kind of getting to know this new person that you are. And it's like, who is this? Like finding that comfort in your new skin can be really tricky and pretty deep and profound. And I think what's interesting is when you get things like the Star and the World and the Ace of Swords and the Page of Wands and then the Wheel of Fortune, you know, you're getting all this good infusion, and you're suddenly standing in a new position, and it can almost feel like a homesickness for an old version of yourself, an old way of doing things, a way of doing things that was familiar and worked for you for a long time, and even maybe was a part of why you got what you got done and experienced what you experienced and had what you had. And so it's like, oh, I've got to figure out how to be this next version. That's kind of the deal that's going on here. And that's where the grace of the Venus retrograde really is, though, because it's not asking you to have that figured out this month. However, it is asking you to step into those shoes and start practicing that way of being, because there's a new way of being for you. You know, we often say in this community, and I'm sure a lot of you are on this page, that, you know, the feeling of it first, then the living of it, right? Then the unfolding of it. And so you are going to be playing around with the feeling of this next version of yourself. Now, obviously, with all this transitional energy going on for you, we also have an element here of there being shifts in your life. There being shifts in what's coming in for you. There being shifts in your relationships and in where you're living and in who you are working closely with. I do see that, and I do think you will be noticing who you are creatively collaborating with and who you are emotionally collaborating with are going to be questions. You're going to be questioning and looking and paying attention to who's serving and who's not. Who's part of this new iteration of yourself and who's not? Who's working with you and who do you have to grieve letting go of? There is something going on there with a turnover in that as well, and also in where you're doing creative work, because these last two cards are quite powerful. Wheel of Fortune and High Priestess are asking you to work on that intuitive level, not so much on the practical level this month. You know, there's a lot here that's like, we're not going to get information from pros and cons lists. we're going to get information from our souls speaking. And that's a general note for everybody this month. So we're all kind of working with this. But for you, because a new version of yourself is going to be speaking to you so strongly and so loudly, it's going to be a little bit jarring, I think. I think it's going to be a little overwhelming. But you're being asked to listen in to this scorpionic Venus retrograde, right? And you're going to be getting huge insights into what you need to be doing next. And I think some of you are going to be quite surprised by where that vista is taking you. I think some of you have an idea of what it is right now, beginning of October. But by the end of October, you may be surprised at how that has shifted. And suddenly you've realized that you don't want to do this project this way anymore. You actually want to focus much more on this aspect of the project. Or you realize you don't really want to live in this house, even though you thought you did for so long. You actually want to live in a much smaller house or in a larger house or in a different city altogether. You may be really surprised by what comes in for that. So let's pull one card from my Cosmic Tarot to top this reading off. Because, man, you guys have a really cool reading. It's quite profound. It's very soulful, but so much information coming in for you that I think will be so illuminating and something you've been wanting to figure out and get your mind around for a while. Four of Swords. Oh my goodness, this energy is around, and it's integration energy, right? Four of Swords is always, in this deck, these are men sitting at an oasis, just taking a moment. They're in the middle of a truck. In the classic deck, it's a knight resting in a crypt. But there's an idea here. There's a value here. There's such a huge value here. And the big thing that I'm talking about this month is participating in the preparation, participating in the revelation. And I think the Four of Swords is much more participatory than we've given it credit for in the past, because we're not just sitting there doing nothing. We're getting information, we're integrating ideas, we're rearranging, we're brainstorming, we're listening, we're paying attention, we're focusing, we're looking around, we're really taking in the information around us, so that when it's time to put our foot on a path, we are only taking the weight and the essentials and what we really want with us. And we are also going in a direction we want to go in. And I do think that there is a grace in not having to push forward so hard all the time. You're going to get your information so that you can direct your course. So you can look at your map and direct your course. So I hope that's really helpful. You guys have amazing energy this month. I'm really excited. I know there's that grief aspect, but I don't know, it just feels freeing. It feels like it's lightening the air. I feel like there's been a heaviness, and there's almost just a relief in letting this go. So I'm sending you all my best. You can connect with me on my website, SARAHTAROT.com. I do private readings. You just want to book ahead a little bit because my calendar tends to fill up. And you can also contact me at the Sarah Tarot on Instagram. I would love to see you guys over there. It's so much fun. And I'm wearing PinkLune's jewelry. As always, 15% off. She's constantly having new things coming in. This is tourmaline. And we've got amethyst. I mean, seriously. So I'll leave her stuff in the description box as well. I'm sending you guys so much love. I will see you in November for more of this insane transitional phase that we are all going through, because wow, it is powerful. Sending you so much love.